Welcome to Neural NebulAI, where we unravel the mysteries around artificial intelligence, clear out misconceptions, and explore its transformative impact on industries, its various use cases, and important considerations you need to make as you embark on an AI journey. Today, we'll explore a range of topics focused on AI's impact on humanity, from its role as a tool, its impact on the creation and elimination of jobs, as well as the socio-cultural changes it can influence as adoption grows. My name is Randall Hunt, VP of Cloud Strategy and Innovation at Kalen, and joining me today is Brian Tarbox, Principal Solutions Architect, an Amazon Community Hero, and an Alexa Champion. Brian, hello.
Hey Randall, how's it going?
It's going well. We chat basically every day, so it's nice to be on a podcast with you. I don't think we've done this before.
Absolutely, and usually we're talking about AI and GenAI, and I generally throw in a reference to killer robots and climate change, and so much is changing, and in our field we always are navigating change, and so this is perhaps just another example of change we have to navigate.
It's interesting, and so I guess we can start off. I'm going to be kind of the pro AI person on this, and I don't see it really as humans versus AI. I see it as humans alongside AI. I'm the happy optimist future, you know. What are you taking a similar position, or are we going to have a friendly debate?
I see pitfalls, but there's pitfalls in every evolution. And we have navigated those pitfalls. But I think this is a time that we need to be cautious. This is definitely one of those inflection points in history, and so it's worth caution. I think there's all kinds of cool things, we can do. I mean, self-driving cars are amazing, except when they run over bicycles because they weren't trained to avoid bicycles. So there's pros and cons.
Absolutely. I think we've stated this in previous episodes, but I think it's important to talk about where we are. Today it's September 15th, and this episode will probably come out after today. The stuff we're going to be talking about, the current state of things, because this field is evolving so rapidly, it's entirely possible that what we say today might not be relevant in 6 months, or maybe our thinking will have changed. And so I just want to caveat it by saying we reserve the right to change our opinions on these things as they evolve. So I want to start by talking about, where does AI struggle right now? What are the things that generative AI solutions, things like ChatGPT, where do you find them kind of having pitfalls right now?
Well, I think there and you said ChatGPT, but there's a variety of expressions. There's the chats, there's the code assistants like CodeWhisperer, which I'm a huge fan of. There's a bunch of these things. I think I've heard GenAI described as mansplaining as a service.
Yeah.
Because the answer you get from most Gen AIs is always very, very confident. And the confidence is unrelated to the qualifications of the speaker or the receiver or the topic. And I think that really, really needs to evolve. One of the things that I know that you did with an early project is you gave one of our systems the ability to say, I don't know. And I think that's brilliant and absolutely crucial, because if you ask intelligent people, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? You'll get an opinion, but oftentimes they'll say, I'm pretty sure about this, or I don't know about this, but I think it's like this, but I could be wrong. And when a human gives me that kind of answer, I have confidence in them. And when they say, gosh, I just don't know, I have all kinds of confidence. I don't know is often the best possible answer. It's a better answer than let me lead you into a direction that, I don't know. I often joke that, if I really wanted to be a bad guy, I'd go to the street corner of some town I'd never been in and give people directions, but with utter confidence. And so I think chat especially needs to have some self-reflection of how confident am I in this answer? Because we all know about hallucinations. We all know about, there's so many examples of things where it gets it wrong, but people don't know that. And so the chat has to evolve, but I think also people have to evolve in how to interact with it. Don't take it as gospel. It's like, you don't believe everything you see in Facebook, or you should believe almost nothing you see in Facebook.
Well,
So
I like what you just said, actually, is people have to evolve too. And I would say it's not just individuals, it's also organizational structures as they exist today in order to work with generative AI in the future. Like those may have to change as well. I mean, even certain social things could potentially change. Right now when we order coffee, right, we're typically talking to a barista or we're talking to another human. And in the future, it may be, you're just saying, robot, please make for me a coffee. And, how is that going to affect and change things? And I think one of the best examples I've seen so far of Bedrock agents is using it to fulfill orders for coffee. It's you have an open API spec that defines what a coffee order looks like, and then the agent is intelligent enough to continuously prompt the user for additional information. I'm interested to see how that develops. I really, to me, those are the use cases where, there's a lot of stuff to be done. But when you think about, if we go back to the past, right, and we think about other revolutions or changes that have happened and how those have impacted organizations and individuals, would you say this is comparable to, moving from the slide rule to the calculator, or do you think this is a larger impact than that?
I think it's larger. The thing that this most reminds me of is, back in the day, I did Windows programming, and so now we go to AWS reInvent, but back in the day, one would go to the Microsoft Professional Development Conference, the PDC, and I remember there was a PDC where 3 months before the event, Bill Gates wrote a note to all his employees saying, everything has to be internet. Every product we announce, everything we say at the next PDC in 3 months has to be internet. And the entire company, man, they did a scramble, and suddenly everything was internet. For good or bad, it certainly seemed like the entire company had switched. So I think it's that kind of thing. I mean, it's kind of everywhere. I mean, my kid is applying to college, and we've had debates. Is he going to write his college essay, or is chat going to write his college essay? And will anybody be able to tell the difference? I mean, it's just everywhere. And it's funny, going to your coffee example, at reInvent, there's always a booth for what they call serverless espresso. And they give you a QR code, and you hit the QR code and you order your coffee, and it's all serverless, and it's wonderful. I would be shocked if they didn't have that driven by ChatGPT this year.
Or Amazon Bedrock Cloud V2.
Right, absolutely. Okay, yes. A chat system, yes. It is going to be everywhere. I think this is huge. I think this is as big as the internet.
Really that big?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. That is impressive. I mean, I don't know. I'm still, I am skeptical that it will be as completely game changing as the internet was in a shorter period of time. I think maybe over the next 10 years, then it's as game changing as the internet. But I feel like the internet just really kind of transformed the world, pretty quickly. I don't know. I was a kid back when the internet came out, so I don't really remember.
Yeah, I'm a little bit older than you. I mean, I think I got paid for my first program, oh my God, in 1980. So, I've gone from, I mean, I legit used to use punch cards,
Yeah.
and sadly I don't have any. I should have kept some, but it just feels like this is everywhere. And really, we're about 20 minutes into it. I mean, there are folks like you who've been doing this, for longer. And actually, my master's degree was in AI a million years ago, but nothing like this. So it depends when you count the starting point. But the popular consciousness, was it about 4 months now, maybe? And it's all anyone can talk about. Now, who knows? Maybe it's tulips, and in 6 months, it's gone. But I don't think so.
Well, I definitely think this is bigger than crypto and blockchain and all of that.
Right.
So within Calent, the company, we have some people who are very, pro crypto and blockchain and things like that. And I think blockchain has certain applications, but I'm very much like anti cryptocurrency, and I've always thought it was kind of ridiculous. Um, but we always have like a fun debate about it. And I think what's interesting is within Calent, there are definitely I would call them GenAI laggards, people who have not tried it yet. But then once people try it, once people try tools like CodeWhisperer or Copilot, and once people try tools like Bedrock, they seem to get it right away. And they seem to move over into the camp of, oh, wow, I can see how this is going to be used. And your mind starts to go a little wild with ideas and applications and how you can really move forward with it. And that's what gets me excited is kind of teaching people and seeing all of the ideas that they unlock. And not to be a total shill for Amazon here, but one of the things that I like that they're doing is they're democratizing access to these large language models. So they're making it a lot easier to get to Cohere, to Anthropic, to Llama 2, and all of this other stuff. But, if you can provision and build these things with a single click, that's a lot easier than trying to I've got my 4090 GPU over here, and I can fit one Llama 2 30 billion on there after I quantize it. And, if I also shove 200 gigs of RAM in there, so I like that it's a little easier to get started with things on Bedrock.
Right. And I'll say CodeWhisperer. I won't apologize for being a shill for CodeWhisperer. I love it. I was one of the early beta folks of Whisper, and it's game changing. It's just game changing. When I'm using CodeWhisperer, I feel like I have a buddy with me who's like, oh, why don't we do this? It's like, oh, ooh, try that. And it's either free or
it's free, or it's $19 a month if you want to have organizational features.
right. And if you don't think your developer is worth $19 a month for 4x product, I mean, people are saying that they're 4x more productive because they're staying in headspace. There was an article recently that said you tap a developer on the shoulder, it costs them 23 minutes to get back in the zone. No one has said how long it takes to, if your tap on the shoulder is going out to Stack Overflow, to look up an answer, or the Amazon documentation. Interestingly, since CodeWhisperer came out, Stack Overflow's traffic has dropped by about 83%, which is that's fascinating to me. I mean, I think Stack Overflow is done.
So this gets into the pros and cons of these things, though, right? Is because I see CodeWhisperer, right, as this huge productivity boost. Me as a developer, I understand the building blocks. I know what I'm trying to do. I understand the general architecture, but man, remembering this API call needs this thing. No one has infinite perfect recall, or at least no one I know has infinite perfect recall. So being able to have CodeWhisperer be that little infinite context-aware recall and also suggestion person working alongside you, that's the hybrid side of it. But then you have the Stack Overflow side, which I feel like I don't really mind as much, because I don't know, I have probably some 100,000 points on Stack Overflow from just using it years and years and answering random questions about everything from MongoDB to Django to async IO and Python. The thing that I don't know, like, how does Stack Overflow remain relevant, or do they need to? It would be a shame to lose it. So what happens, I guess?
Yeah, I don't see a path forward for them, to be honest. On one hand, Stack Overflow, in my opinion, was never so much, hey, give me the chunk of code that does such and such. So like the example I use for CodeWhisperer is, in my own programming, I have metrics for everything. So I'm doing CloudWatch metrics for everything. And writing the code to do a CloudWatch metric, it's 30 lines of JSON.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I've written 100 times. I don't remember it. I always have to look for it. I don't want to remember it. I don't want to fill my cortex with that. I want the exocortex to have that. Now, if you asked in Stack Overflow, how do I do, a CloudWatch alarm, people would probably slam you as, look in the documentation. This is not
Right.
Right. So it's not that sort of thing. It's more like, hey, it's more the whys. Why should I use a metric versus an alarm or something like that? And those debates are interesting. So it's a different sort of thing. And so like CodeWhisperer, you wouldn't say in CodeWhisperer, hey, looking at the function I have so far, do you think I should do an alarm or should I send an SNS message to somebody? You don't ask that sort of thing. Now, but you would ask that sort of thing perhaps to chat.
Yeah.
And I'll say another example place where there's room for different things is I was doing some work with Dynamo, and I'm not great at Dynamo. And so I asked chat, I want to do a Dynamo table that does blah, blah, blah. And it gave me structure. And I said, oh, but I want to do a query on this and that. And it said, oh, okay, then I can do such and such. And I say a lot of people
Iteratively design it.
Right. And I think a lot of people don't know that you can do that. A lot of people, I think, don't know that you can. I mean, we're so into it, but, well, of course you can. But a lot of people don't know that you can just ask a follow-up question. And I said, hey, what if I want to do these queries? And I said, well, what if I want to do this query as well? I said, well, then you should denormalize and do these sort of things. And I'm like, wow, you came up with I should denormalize. That's really quite interesting.
Well, I want to come back to the Stack Overflow side of it because I have another point. But I want to throw out this one other sort of scenario that we were working on with a customer recently where they wanted to provide a natural language interface over their data. So instead of writing SQL, which requires a specialized skill set that you study and learn over years, and you learn the impact and the performance of queries, you learn denormalized or normalized and their normal form and all this other stuff. That information is valuable, and you can use it to optimize and make the best queries. But occasionally, you need to write a query quickly. And we found with Claude V2 that we could take the DDL for this customer. The DDL is the data definition language of SQL. We would paste that schema in, and we then would ask questions, and it would generate the queries. And we would tell it what indexes we had. And we would even say that in the DDL. So we would say, we would have the line of SQL that says create index, we would have comments, and comments in SQL is just 2 dashes. And we would describe what the tables were in English, and it would parse that. It would generate the query, and then we could run the query, measure the performance of it, send that result back into the model and say, hey, is there a way, this was the result set and this was the performance. Is there a way to make this more performant? So we would add like a limit 1 on the end of the query just to test the query plan. We would paste the query plan in, and we could do all of this programmatically. So the model would optimize the query itself without you having to go and do multiple shots. Like, this was something that they could programmatically do. That was amazing to me.
Absolutely. And we've talked about the humans needing to evolve. I think engineers using things like CodeWhisperer or notebooks, you're not going to be in this field if you're not going to be interested in learning and evolving. And, we've all, what's the expression, learn a new language every year or something. So we're used to that. The general public, who we believe is a target for quite a lot of this, is not necessarily, used to that. I mean,
developers are typically the kind of people who don't just want to know the time, they want to know how the watch works. And then there's a whole, lots of people like that who aren't developers also exist, but then there's a whole other class of people who are like, can you just tell me the time? I don't care how it works.
It is interesting in sort of a sick way to sometimes listen to my wife argue with Alexa. Alexa, turn off the headboard. Turn off the headboard, Alexa. Alexa, turn off the damn headboard. Headboard off, Alexa. So humans, need to evolve, and humans aren't necessarily always the most flexible. And this whole, prompt engineering of, we'll learn to say it the right way. That's going to take some evolution on both sides.
I also think it's not going to be a static thing. I think it's going to change as models change. There's prompt engineering, which I think is the practice of crafting the prompt, but it's also the practice of optimizing the prompt, especially in a world where we're paying per token. So if this per token kind of pricing model continues, the prompt optimization is going to be very interesting. Let's go back. Let's go back to that conversation we were having about CodeWhisperer.
Mm-hmm.
We were mentioning the downfall essentially of Stack Overflow. So what do you think is going to happen as engineers and as people begin to use CodeWhisperer more? They are less likely to post a question on Stack Overflow. So the training set that is needed to make these models more advanced no longer exists. So there's a training set cutoff in 2022 or something, and the quality of data that's available to these systems is forever lower quality than it was before 2022. So everything new is going to have a harder time. Do you believe that?
Well, only if you assume that things like CodeWhisperer were trained on Stack Overflow, and I'm not sure they were. I think it was CodeWhisperer was largely trained on Amazon's code base itself. I mean, this is what we hear. So, and the thing is,
well, maybe
and
not CodeWhisperer then. Maybe models in general.
Sure. As things evolve, the sources of truth, I think it's a truism. As things evolve, the sources of truth evolve as well. And the thing is, if you look at any interesting question on Stack Overflow, there are generally half a dozen or a dozen correct answers before the accepted answer. And you could argue that those other answers were wrong. And do I want the system trained on the suboptimal, answers? So that's interesting. Where I thought you were going to go is in terms of evolution of jobs and things, because this will definitely cause an evolution of jobs. But I think that's been going on in our field forever. I mean, back in the day, you could make a fine living writing C++ sort algorithms, for libraries. There were whole companies that made, memory allocation optimizers, and well, those don't exist anymore. Did the field go away? No, the field is robust. It just changes. So we move higher up the food chain, and I think people will keep having to do that.
To me, it's kind of like, okay, well, we used to not have power tools, so it would take 5 people to solve through something, and you'd all, there'd be 3 people on one side, 2 people on another side, so 4 people to solve something, and there'd be 2 people on each side, push, pull, push, pull. Now we have chainsaws, so, you don't really need to do that anymore. You can kind of just go through. So are these models, are these technologies like power tools?
I think so. And I have to say, I actually have used one of those giant 4-person saws to cut down a tree on a farm in Canada, and it's quite a process.
So one person can now do the work of 4, for example, if we take the analogy further. So instead of having 100 people writing marketing copy, only one person can produce the output of, say, 10 marketers. Instead of having, 20 creatives working, you could have one creative working, augmented with generative AI to come up with, designs and things like that. And then is that where you see things going?
Possibly. I mean, it's interesting that you said one creative, which I guess means a human, because for now, right. I mean, and I sort of go back to the question of, could an AI system generate Ted Lasso? I'm not sure. I think could an AI system develop the next episode of Ghost Hunter Academy? Oh, sure. Or Sharknado 12, sure. And I think we have a bimodal distribution of entertainment, at the very least, and It's like you can absolutely use a Gen AI system to generate a cover letter, but and I guess it's better for humans not to write cover letters because they're dumb. But um, sorry, recruiters out there, but they're dumb. Um, uh, but again, I think it keeps rising. What do you recall? What requires a human to do? Um, and the thing is, I mean, and I think this can tie into the, oh my God, if we got to the I guess you call it general AI, if you had an AI system that really understood why Ted Lasso is so awesome, that's a daunting prospect. That's something to really think about. What does that imply?
There's a lot of nuance in that show, and I think to your point, it would be difficult to recreate that. And I mean, there's the writer's strike going on at the time of this recording, and I have friends and people that are in my family that work in that field, and there's interesting things going on where Hollywood is trying to figure out if they can just leverage generative AI for everything, and then they never have to go forward again with employing these silly humans that have to take time off and have social lives, and the on one side
and get paychecks.
exactly. Well, you have to pay the computers too. They have to have their electricity and their silicon to operate on.
Right. Well, some years back, I actually took a class at Disney University down in Florida, on doing animation, and this was all hand-drawn animation, of course. And I didn't know, but back in the day, you had your main animator who would write the keyframe, who would draw the keyframes, and then you'd have an in-betweener, a tweener, who would draw the intervening frames. Now, that job doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's it. That's an example of a job where, yeah, you can see an automated process taking that over.
Well, tweening even was already somewhat automated. So, I mean, a lot of, popular anime shows were built with tweening. So it was, to your point, you would draw the keyframe and then a computer would go and fill in the changes.
Right. But
so
there was a time when that was all human.
Right.
And so I think, it's the, I mean, I saw a talk with Dave Thomas and Andy Hunt, way back when, and they talked about, they had a metaphor of a tree, and you're climbing a tree and the alligators are climbing up after you, and you have to keep advancing your skill set because things get automated, things get simpler, things get outsourced. I mean, it's interesting, actually. I haven't heard people talking about comparing generative AI to outsourcing. But I think there's some similarities there where we said we can send some jobs for lesser cost.
Yeah, I think so. And the question is the work product, when you're getting things from the models right now, I think it is objectively worse than what a human can produce. But then there's the question of time. Can this be accelerated, which is not something that we could do with offshoring, right? With offshoring, you still had to pay in time to get things built and get things done. Even if it was cheaper monetarily, it still took a ton of time. So I think the variable that generative AI reduces is time. If it can produce these things at 70 tokens per second, then that really does change the math a little bit. And it's the same way as the chainsaw. The chainsaw lets you nominally work as a single person, but also go faster. Yeah, right. And it's an interesting question.
Another place where I find it really useful is a lot of people, I think, are using Gen AI. Give me a rough draft and then I'll polish it. And that's one approach. But there's also take my written product and make it a little different. So I've got a friend who is brilliant and self-describes as totally acerbic. And so he writes these tweets that are factually correct and just infuriate people. And we have suggested, I was on a call with him recently, and we were suggesting to him that he take his output and put it through and ask chat to rewrite this as if I was nice.
Oh man.
And it would do that. And he was sort of appalled and said he wouldn't do that. But I'm actually the next time he sends out a tweet or something, I'm going to try that and see what it does, because that's helping, not replacing. Maybe.
Well, I think one of the places that we'll see generative AI, and we're already seeing it, in fact, take on a hybrid approach, a helping approach, is contact centers. So I think contact centers are going to be the place where you see real-time generative AI use quickly, like in the next 3 months. It's going to be a human hybrid agent. So you'll be talking to a human, but there'll be a generative AI solution that's listening to the conversation and pulling up relevant details. It's like, hey, I'm trying to cancel my subscription. Okay, well, the AI will go out and it'll grab the customer details and it will say, okay, this is a long time loyal customer. And then the human will say something to the effect of, oh, why are you canceling? And then the customer will say, the human agent will say, why are you canceling, sir or madam? And then the AI agent will say possible reasons, and the customer will say, it's too expensive. And so AI agent knows, okay, too expensive, long-time customer, what is LTV? What is the long-term lifetime value of this customer? Can we offer them a retention bonus? So, yes. And then does the math, and then it says to the human, hey, human, see if they would be interested in staying on with us as a customer if we were able to cut 20% off the price or whatever, the 18.45% off of the price, and then the human has the conversation. And I see that happening literally currently. We even have customers who are asking us to build those sorts of things.
Well, the funny thing is, Randall, I actually worked at a company a few years ago that already was doing similar things, and it was they're doing real-time sentiment analysis, and so it would pop up in a pop-up window on the agent screen that said, the customer just said something of emotional import. Pay attention, or your energy is a little bit low, or you're interrupting. And so there is some real-time sentiment analysis was already there. So that is in place, right now. What you're talking about is the next step, and I absolutely see that happening. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if that's built into the next version of, or a next version of contact center.
Definitely. Okay, I want to kind of get us back on track and also start to wind down here, because we've talked about a lot of different things. So here's what we sort of covered today: is how is the average person going to end up collaborating with AI? I think we've talked about a couple examples of that. How is corporate organizational structure and governance going to evolve? I don't think anyone can truly predict what's going to happen right now. But I think, what new roles will exist. We'll get prompt engineers, we'll get generative AI experts, and they'll be employed in different divisions. But eventually, I think this skill will become just integrated into your existing job function and into your existing role. Just as we learn to use the way we learn to touch type, and that's kind of necessary in corporate America to be able to go quickly, we're going to have to learn how to work alongside generative AI. That's my position. What, do you agree, or do you think it's going to be a little more complicated?
I think it will be everywhere, and I'm always shocked to the number of engineers who don't touch type, who are still going like this. So, yes, it's astonishing. So I think that there will be people who get it and people who don't, and I think you will see a corresponding success and failure ratio. I mean, it's as you said, if I can type 10 times faster than you can, I've got an advantage.
I sat next to a celebrity on a plane the other night, and I watched them touch typing. And I was so surprised, because they're not a particularly, they're digitally native. They were born in the time where everyone already had access to computers and everything. So I was very surprised. But to me, in our role, obviously touch typing is super important, but I also think just corporate America in general, like, you have to have this skill, and you have to be able to use Excel, for example. I feel like that's a prerequisite for basically every role that I've ever worked in, is knowing Excel. So is knowing generative AI going to be the same way? Like, is it going to be that skill? And maybe not. Maybe lots of people are get away without using it.
Well, I think it's going to be a higher level skill. And you think about writing and presenting. As you said, I'm in the AWS Heroes program, and we've done mentoring to people on how to give presentations. And we've talked about the notion that everything is a story. And I think everything is a story. But there are lots of people who don't understand storytelling. And so their presentations, are not engaging, and they're not memorable. And so I think we're going to see a range of the people who are, more or less facile with this new tool.
And maybe that affects their performance in those roles.
Absolutely.
One last topic before we close out here. I said a while back, and this is I think the first time I've said this in a recorded setting, but it's something that I stand by. I think we're going to hit general artificial intelligence in the next 5 years or so. Not sentience, and I do want to differentiate between sentience and sapience and AGI, artificial general intelligence. I think we're going to hit that in the next 5 years. I don't have a particularly compelling argument around that. I'm just looking at the pace of things and extrapolating into the future. What do you think?
I think that's a bold claim. I think we're going to be shocked. You know that my background is I used to work with bottlenose dolphins, and one of the people say, "Oh, are animals smarter than humans?" Which is just a phrase that just annoys the crap out of me, because they're so different. And one of the things I learned one of the biggest lessons I learned from working with dolphins was just how different sentient creatures can view the world from completely different points of view. And so, you said you don't see sentience in the next 5 years, but when that comes, I think we have no idea what it's gonna look like. So I think it's crucial for us to stay flexible. Now, generalized AI, it's funny, that's a whole topic of what is generalized AI versus a chess playing computer, a code writing CodeWhisperer, a system that can say, hey, how do I look? They can answer, how do I look? What's the weather? It's my anniversary. What should I buy for my spouse? I don't know. I mean, if that's generally AI, I could absolutely see that in 5 years.
Yeah, and I think sentience, to me, it implies the ability to reason about one's own existence in a way that gives rise to what we would deem a personality. And it's not just emulating the personality. Or maybe I'm talking myself out of this right now, because I feel like we're all emulating personalities. I don't think we're going to get to the place where the machine is self-aware in the next 5 years, but I think we're going to get to a place where the models are able to take action, use tools the same way a human would, and incorporate new information into their matrices in real time. That, I believe, is going to happen. And then I think eventually from there, you do get sentience. You do get what is more or less a digital life form.
If you can emulate self-awareness, what's the difference between that and self-awareness? I mean, there was the Star Trek Next Gen episode of, where Data is on trial to decide whether he's an individual, essentially. And someone says, does Data have a soul? And the person says, I don't know that I have a soul. These are fascinating questions.
I know. And Turing, Alan Turing discussed this way back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. And then we even, in 1959, I can't remember where this happened, but it was like Claude Shannon and a bunch of other people, they all met up and they created the Perceptron. And the perceptron was one of the first neural networks that ever existed. And it was graduate students, wiring stuff together in a lab. And what it would do is that you could show it a card, and that card could have a number on it. And the perceptron would light up, and it would guess what the number on that card was. And that was in 1959. But it was hardwired. It took a tremendous amount of human effort to go and build this. And it couldn't incorporate new knowledge. They could change connections around, but they had to be manually calculated. And again, before digital calculators. So they're going in and they're manually calculating what the weights and biases of this architecture are. And yeah, it was like the fact that we had this in 1959 and now we're in 2023. I'm curious, what does the next 60 years look like if we get general artificial intelligence and then we get sentience from that? And to me, the scale at which silicon and the speed at which silicon can operate gives it this tremendous advantage over biological life forms. And do we as humans move into this digital substrate? Am I being completely off the wall and off the topic right now? I don't know, but this is the stuff that I think about it, right?
Right. Absolutely. And I'll give you just a little aside. I knew Claude Shannon. I actually dated his daughter.
What?
Yes. Yes.
How have you never told me that before?
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. No, Claude Shannon was, I used to juggle with the MIT juggling club, and I saw, and Claude was there, and he was, and, we would all try new tricks, and he was trying a new trick, and he threw, the balls up in the air, and they fell to the ground, and he was lost in thought for about a minute. And then he picked up the balls and could do the trick. And we're like, no, that is not how humans work, man. We have to try it a few more times. You can't just think your way through understanding that. It was terrifying.
I'm just blown away that you knew Claude Shannon and let alone dated his daughter. That was Brian, you have so many stories. Like we gotta meet up again sometime soon.
We've got to hang out. One last thing to take away from it is, so it took us, how long did it take us from Kitty Hawk, to get to
the moon?
Yeah, well, and then we abandoned it. But it's the hockey stick, and I think with yes, it was from 59, but it really feels like we're right about here.
I think so too. I think we're getting ready to get a injection in the arm in terms of technological acceleration that comes from generative AI. So I don't know. Some people say it's dystopian and we're all headed for Skynet and Terminator, but I'm much more of this is going to change everything in a very positive way. With some of the downsides that we talked about today as well. The lack of material and things like that.
Right. And we can cut this next phrase out, but I for one welcome our robot overlords.
I for one welcome our robot overlords. We should throw one more quote in there. We should do Arthur C. Clarke's any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. I love that. Brian, thanks again for chatting with me today. I would love to chat with you again soon, and I know it's sort of the end of the day for you over there, so hope you have a great rest of your day and a great long weekend. And I'm going to go ahead and say that we're going to do a couple more episodes together, but I can't wait to chat with you again. Okay. That concludes our episode of Neural NebulAI. We hope we leave you with something to think about as you pursue innovating with AI. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a rating and a review on the platform you're listening on, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.